John Gale Horton entered the world on April 30th, 1925, in Los Angeles, California. Though born in the glamour of the West Coast, his roots were far from silver screens or studio lights. His parents, sharecroppers Meitel and John Horton, crisscrossed the American South and Southwest, seeking a better life through migrant farming. The family's nomadic rhythm would become a central theme in Johnny's early years, embedding in him a restlessness that followed him long after fame came knocking. The Hortons settled briefly in Rusk, Texas, and later in Gallatin, Texas. These were not places of prosperity, but rather communities shaped by faith, sweat, and music. The folk songs that spilled from front porches, the hymns that echoed through Baptist churches, and the cowboy ballads shared around campfires all helped form Johnny's musical backbone. He began playing guitar in his teenage years, teaching himself chord progressions and vocal phrasing by mimicking the tunes he heard on the radio. Jimmie Rodgers became a lodestar. The singing brakeman's blend of yodel and railroad poetry left an imprint on Johnny's imagination. In 1943, Johnny graduated from high school and enrolled in college. He attended various institutions, Lon Morris Junior College, Seattle University, and finally Baylor University, studying theology with a vague intention of joining the ministry. But the pulpit never beckoned as strongly as the stage. Music was no longer just a pastime, it was an obsession. In the mid-1940s, Johnny left the dry heat of Texas for the frozen goldfields of Alaska. Seeking adventure and employment, he worked on a fishing boat and at a gold mine. The physical toll was high, but so was the spiritual reward. Solitude gave him space to write, and the vast northern wilderness offered him a fresh perspective. He returned to the United States with stories in his head and songs in his heart. He began performing locally, entering amateur contests, and gradually gaining attention for his clear voice, earnest delivery, and vivid storytelling. In 1948, he won first prize on the talent show Louisiana Hayride, which operated out of Shreveport and served as a rival to Nashville's Grand Ole Opry. Unlike the Opry, Hayride embraced raw talent and allowed newer artists space to shine. Horton, tall and handsome, with a warm voice and quick smile, immediately caught their attention. He married Donna Cook in 1946, but the relationship quickly unraveled under the strain of his wandering career and musical ambition. They divorced, and Johnny threw himself more deeply into songwriting and performing. The turning point came in 1951 when he signed a contract with Cormac Records. These early recordings, while lacking in polish, revealed his instinct for balladry and his fascination with history and folklore. He was finding his identity not through trends, but through tales. In 1953, Johnny married Billie Jean Jones, the widow of Hank Williams. Their union brought both comfort and complexity. Billie Jean had endured heartbreak, and Johnny was no stranger to sorrow. Together, they built a life that was both tender and tumultuous. They raised 2 daughters, and Johnny adopted Billie Jean's daughter from her previous marriage. With a growing family to support, Johnny pursued music with fresh urgency. His break came when he returned to Louisiana Hayride, this time as a headliner. It was here that he began refining the honky-tonk style that would distinguish him in the early 1950s. He signed with Mercury Records in 1952 and released a string of singles. Though these efforts earned regional popularity, they failed to catch fire nationally. He recorded songs like The Mansion You Stole and All for the Love of a Girl, which hinted at his gift for melody and melancholy. His sound straddled 2 worlds, the sob stories of the honky-tonks and the dusty epics of cowboy folklore. Producers didn't always know what to make of him, but Johnny knew who he was. He stayed the course, confident that his voice had a place. It wasn't stardom, but it was survival, and it sharpened him. In 1956, Johnny signed with Columbia Records. Under the guidance of producer Don Law, Horton was encouraged to pursue his historical storytelling instincts. It was a bold direction. While others chased love ballads and barroom anthems, Johnny dove into centuries-old conflicts and legends. The breakthrough came with The Battle of New Orleans. Released in 1959, it told the story of Andrew Jackson's troops defeating the British in 1815. The lyrics danced between fact and flair, mixing humor with heroism. Set to a traditional fiddle tune and carried by Johnny's expressive voice, the song caught fire. It climbed to number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100 and sold over 1 million copies. It won a Grammy for Best Country and Western Recording. And suddenly, Johnny was no longer a regional act. He was a national figure. He followed it with Johnny Reb, Sink the Bismarck, and North to Alaska, each a musical painting of historical or frontier scenes. These songs weren't fads. They were old stories told in new ways. He made American folklore swing, and school children sang along. His voice carried the weight of a storyteller who cared about his material. Each word was measured. Each song was a world unto itself. By 1959, Johnny Horton had become a leading figure in country and crossover music. His style was unmistakable. He had found the perfect fusion of folk history and rockabilly rhythm. His music appealed to both country purists and pop audiences. His looks didn't hurt. Tall, rugged, with piercing eyes and a stage presence that balanced boyish charm with steely resolve, Horton was every bit the performer. Yet fame did not spoil him. He remained deeply attached to his family, especially his daughters. He wrote constantly. He studied books on American history, seeking inspiration for new songs. Unlike many peers who relied on co-writers, Horton often worked alone, scribbling lyrics late into the night. His live performances were electric. Audiences loved the way he explained each song's historical background before launching into it. He wasn't a preacher or a showman. He was a storyteller in boots, guitar slung low, breathing life into battles and frontiers. Sink the Bismarck, released in 1960, was another triumph. Based on the World War II naval battle, it climbed the charts and reaffirmed his place in the musical world, but it would also be his last major hit during his lifetime. Fate had other plans. On the night of November 4, 1960, Johnny performed at the Skyline Club in Austin, Texas, the same venue where Hank Williams had played his last show. Horton's set was tight. He told the crowd he had a strange feeling. He said goodbye in a way that felt too final. Hours later, in the early morning darkness of November 5th, Horton, guitarist Tommy Tomlinson, and bassist Tillman Franks were driving near Milano, Texas. A truck, driven by a drunken man, crossed the center line and slammed into their car. Horton died before reaching the hospital. He was 35. The news stunned the country music world. A man at the height of his creative powers, with a young family and a trail of hits behind him, was gone in an instant. His widow, Billie Jean, had now lost 2 legendary husbands to early deaths. Friends described her as shattered but resilient, clinging to faith and family in the wake of unbearable sorrow. Thousands attended his funeral. At his gravesite in Shreveport, mourners sang his songs and recited the historical verses he had turned into hits. His tombstone bore a simple epitaph, "Singing Historian." He wasn't the first artist to die young, but few had captured the American past with such flair, and fewer still had vanished while their brightest songs still echoed on radios. Though his life was brief, Johnny Horton's influence ran wide. Teachers used his songs to teach school children about wars and explorers. Country singers emulated his phrasing. Rockabilly musicians studied his timing. Film directors licensed his work for frontier-themed productions. North to Alaska, his final major hit, was released posthumously and featured in the John Wayne film of the same name. The song galloped like the Klondike wind, and its chorus lived on in pop culture. His historical ballads continued to be passed down through generations. They weren't museum pieces. They were campfire stories with a beat. His daughters carried his memory with grace, preserving archives and granting interviews that revealed the man behind the microphone. They remembered a father who told bedtime stories, who hugged tightly before tours, and who believed that music should mean something. Critics who once dismissed him as a novelty later reconsidered. His work was reissued, box sets were released, biographies were written, and tribute concerts brought his music to new listeners. The man who once sang about battles and voyages had become part of the lore himself.